this short PowerPoint talks about today's kindergarten education and if it's developmentally appropriate as we define developmentally appropriateness in child development. So we talk a lot about developmentally appropriate practice, particularly in early childhood. It's a big thing for us. We are always aware of what milestones are for children's development and whether or not children are meeting those milestones, planning activities and experiences to help them meet those milestones, etc., etc. But what does that really mean? So developmentally appropriate practice is teaching and learning that is in line with children's physical, cognitive, social, linguistic, cultural, and gender development. So that even goes beyond the 4 areas of development that we talk about even in 200 or even in infant toddler development. We're thinking linguistically and culturally and gender, of course, as well. So that when we look at developmentally appropriate practice, we're really focused on the materials that we use, the way the room is organized, the way we talk to children, the activities that we provide, the materials that we provide. All of those things have to meet the developmental capabilities of the child. When we look at developmentally appropriate kindergarten, then through that lens, and when we think about early childhood, being 5 and 6 years old is still within the lifespan, still in the realm of early childhood. So when we're looking at what developmentally appropriate kindergarten should look like through that lens, we relate learning to what they already know. So we figure out what we think about what development they have already gone through. We think about their likes and their dislikes, and we focus on things that they're interested in. We connect what they're learning today with what they have already learned. We know that all learning is based on prior knowledge. We individualize the curriculum as much as possible. We consider diversities, abilities, backgrounds. We do a lot of that in early childhood. We make learning physically and mentally active. So we don't use worksheets in early childhood. We do a lot of hands-on activities where they are open-ended lots of times, and children are learning through doing. We also are looking at the changing kindergarten. And so as I flip back here, when we are thinking about what developmentally appropriate kindergarten is, this is what we're looking at. But this, then, is what we have now. So over the years, we have longer school days. We've gone to half-day kindergarten to full-day programs. And some of us who used to be in half-day kindergarten programs view kindergarten much more like a precursor for getting ready to go to school, much like pre-K would be, versus what it is today. There's definitely more of an emphasis on academics. There's more testing. One of the goals is to read by first grade and to be able to have good test scores, standardized test scores, by 3rd grade when they start doing standardized testing. The whole half-day to full-day change has some, I don't want to call it theory, but has some, there's some reasons behind it. So one part of it is helping transition to primary grades because those primary grades, first through 5th grade or 6th grade, are all whole day programs. Having a full day provides more flexibility, more time to do activities, which then theoretically equals more learning, more time for practicing socialization, more in-depth coverage of the curriculum, greater progress in literacy, math, social skills, and science, more testing, and then all children reading well by first grade. But those of you that know anything about children, and those of you that have worked in education, know that that is not necessarily true. One of the things that has come along with those ideas is the push down in academics, and which has led to an escalated curriculum. And what we mean by that is that we have been pushing down academic standards from a grade above, which means that today's kindergarten now looks more like first grade, and first grade looks more like second grade, etc., etc. So things that children do in kindergarten now are much different than they used to be, and have pushed kindergartners out of that developmentally appropriate range for curriculum and activities and expectations. A lot of it started with the No Child Left Behind Act, which started in 2002. And that No Child Left Behind Act was really aimed at increasing academics, increasing standardized test scores, making teachers be accountable, more accountable for children's learning. There was a whole host of things that came along with it. The high stakes testing, the standardized test. The reason we call it high stakes testing is because what was happening under No Child Left Behind is that if there wasn't a certain percentage of children that were scoring high enough on those standardized tests, then the teacher and the school could be held accountable, and then parents could do things like move children out of that school and have them go to a quote-unquote better school. It caused a lot of problems. The other thing to consider is that with an escalated curriculum, kindergartners need to be able to read by first grade and then score well on standardized tests in reading by third grade. So kindergartners don't take standardized tests. Standardized testing doesn't actually start until third grade. But the idea is if we push down the curriculum and we force more academics on them, they're going to pass those standardized tests at a better rate if we do that. Then we have accountability shove down, which is kind of like push down. But here we are trying, the idea is trying to build stronger academic skills at a younger age in order for them to score well on standardized tests in third grade. So it's more like we're like trying to fill up the child with as much knowledge as we can, thinking that that's going to lead to better standardized test scores in third grade. However, what we know is that that causes problems because it's not developmentally appropriate. Research shows that when children are given time to mature sufficiently to process academics, they perform better. So there's like some research out there that says those children that wait a year to go to kindergarten actually perform better in kindergarten. And that's because they've had a whole nother year to mature and develop. And so they're literally processing what they're learning better. The other thing to remember is that development is still variable for 5 and 6-year-olds. It doesn't change once a child turns 5. Children don't all automatically develop at the same rate. We also know that there's differences in how boys and girls' brains work, and they learn differently. Boys in particular need more movement in the classroom. They need even more hands-on experiences than girls do because of how their brains work. We also know that because we now have less recess, less arts, less hands-on activities, we have kindergartners that have more stress, more anxiety, and more depression. All of this stress and anxiety and a learning environment that's not developmentally appropriate then can lead to negative attitudes towards school, which then can last a lifetime. The other issue is that it feeds or fuels the teacher shortage. So teachers have more expectations to try to force academics on young children who are not developmentally ready just so that they can score specific standardized test scores when they get to third grade. And when we put that stress on children, we have more behavior concerns. So when we're looking at data like who gets expelled from school, we're seeing more kindergartners than ever who have had to, who've been expelled because of behavior problems, because of the stress related to what's happening. So I just want to go back here to this idea of developmentally appropriate kindergarten. And the book addresses this a little bit, but the major theme I want you to think about, not only as we're looking at what curriculum can look like in kindergarten, but think about the developmentally appropriate the developmentally appropriate factors here. And I know the first question a lot of you are going to ask is, well, if we're doing it wrong, why don't we fix it? Why don't we fix it? And there's a lot of reasons. There's not a lot of great answers. But one of the things that we think about when we think about why aren't we changing what is happening in today's schools, it's because of things like this. So when we look at things like No Child Left Behind, which President Obama changed to the Every Student Succeeds Act and took away some of the high stakes testing and things like that, that was great. But when we have people in government basically running and making decisions for schools, then we're going to end up having problems with what's happening in the schools. We have to make sure that the leaders, the people who are in charge of education in America, understand how education works. There has to be a shift in this idea that America has to be the greatest. America has to have the highest math and science scores. Children all have to read by a certain age, pass tests at third grade. Those expectations are unrealistic. And until we can fix that problem and people's perceptions, including parents' perceptions of how academics and learning really work, we're going to continue to have those same problems.